that's a big thing I try to educate my patients. I'm like, when we give you, some type of food restriction, it's not that we need you to do it forever, but it's more of right now going to be an educational place for you to start learning how to make better choices. And when you can learn to make better choices about what you're eating, then it's just going to be more natural to be eating healthier on a regular basis with way less effort.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of What Did the Patient Say with Doctors Dana and Lauren Brindisi, sisters and owners of Carolina Functional Neurology Center. We are bringing you inside information from real conversations we have with patients on a daily basis. We get asked the same questions and want to spread the truth on health and healing because we believe everyone deserves to know the answers.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of What Did the Patient Say? With myself, Dr. Lauren, and Dr. Dana over there. We are going to be talking about nutrition today. Dr. Dana, what are some of the things you hear in your office most often from patients about nutrition?
I think one of the biggest things that I hear, especially right from the get-go, is people are like, I don't know what to eat. I can't eat anything. This person tells me I got to have this diet, and this person tells me, no, that one's not good. I got to do this one. And there's so much information out there on the internet that people drive themselves crazy because everybody is going to tell you what worked for them. And it's not a one size fits all approach. And just because it worked for your friend or your grandma or your brother or whatever, it doesn't mean that that is exactly what you should do, because you are not your brother or your grandma or your friends. So, just like we talk about all of these other conditions and things that we're, bringing to you guys, nutrition is the same. It's not, everything is not for everybody. And based on your needs is where you need to formulate a nutrition plan. So you need to talk to somebody that knows what they're talking about, that knows how to test you, that knows how to respond to the symptoms that you're having and formulate something that's specific to you. I think one of the biggest examples everybody knows about now is intermittent fasting. Everyone's like, intermittent fasting is the best thing that has ever happened since sliced bread. And the reality of it is that's only partially true. It can be really good for a lot of people, and it can be really good for most people. But if you don't know how to intermittent fast and you don't know where your body sits before you start fasting, you can feel really bad. And if you are hypoglycemic or reactive hypoglycemia, and you don't have somebody to coach you into it, you're going to be really mad at your grandma when you start intermittent fasting and you feel terrible.
It's so funny. I had a patient I just had this conversation with, healthy, young male, works out a lot. He's doing intermittent fasting, but based on everything he told me and his lab work, he's got dysglycemia and he's fasting way too long. And so I had that conversation with him of intermittent fasting is great, but it sounds like you're doing too much, and it sounds like you're not eating enough, right? And he waits till way too long through the afternoon to eat anything. And he's like, yeah, I feel so much better after I eat. And I'm like, well, yeah, we got to back this down. And even with intermittent fasting, right? And I know it's something you do in your office is adding things like bone broth, and there's other options while you're fasting, or easing into fasting, or smaller meals. There's a ton of different options, and you really do need guidance for what might be.
Well, I think people see these YouTubers and they're like, I've been fasting for 5 days, and they're like ripped and like all of this stuff. And it's like, that's great. And you look great. And we're super happy for you. However, they have been working on that for a very, very long time. And sometimes you're getting like a piece of the information, and you're taking that from, like, you've been sitting on the couch eating potato chips for the last 7 years. And then you think you're going to fast for, 12, 16, 24 hours. And all of a sudden you're going to be this bodybuilder. doesn't work that way. You probably have to clean some things up before
Yeah.
you get to that point. And that goes not only for fasting, there's so many other diets, right? Like people talk about keto, or people talk about paleo, or people talk about, gluten-free and autoimmune diets and, low carb and all of this stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
we get these snippets of what that truly is and what that truly means from the internet, or influencers and YouTubers who are giving you their little piece of the puzzle. And while it's great for them, or it was great for your grandma, right, there's probably some backstory that you don't know about that got them to the point that was helpful, or maybe their system needed that in that moment and it was really helpful for them.
It's not always the same. And the gluten-free one's really interesting because we hear gluten-free a lot. That doesn't mean everybody has to be gluten-free. But the other thing is, some people go on a gluten-free diet and then they go, I felt worse when I got off of gluten. And I love explaining that to patients, because we run some food sensitivity panels looking at a variety of components of wheat that people could be reacting to. There's actually a compound called gluteomorphan. It's also in cheese, caseomorphan. In which it can actually bind to your opioid receptors, and people become addicted to gluten and cheese.
Literally.
And then you start having withdrawal effects from not having it. So that's really important to understand, because you might go gluten-free and then go, oh my gosh, that didn't work for me. I felt awful when I started.
So gluten must be amazing. So you should eat all of it.
Yeah. And then it just usually means if you feel significantly better or significantly worse,
right,
there's a mechanism going on, and it's really important, I would think, for anybody to want to know why works for you. What is the mechanism, and understanding as to why you either felt better or worse. And that's why having a provider that can guide you through that. That's the same with keto. I mean, I see people doing keto and they're going on keto, off keto, on keto, off keto. And I go, your metabolism and your blood sugar regulation and your gut function is just going to be all over the place.
And I think a big thing to note on that is people interchange keto with low carb. They are not the same. So full disclaimer, this is like a pet peeve of mine, because if you are actually in ketosis and you do it the right way, and you do it with a provider that shows you how to get into ketosis, how do you stay in ketosis, what does ketosis even mean? Most people don't even know that that's what keto stands for. Can you tell I like talking about this stuff? I get all riled up about it. But low carb and keto is not the same. So we were talking about in a previous episode how your brain needs fuel and oxygen and stimulation. Well, we get fuel in the form of either glucose or ketones, right? So if you are actually in ketosis, what that means is your body is burning fat as fuel. Now, people get the keto flu sometimes if you do it right, because there's this transition period where your body's kind of like, what the heck is happening? Usually, you eat a banana and you get some energy, you go for a run, right? But as you're transitioning into ketosis, your body is like, what am I supposed to be using as a fuel source? And you have to do it well. Otherwise, you're losing muscle mass and you think you're going to be the bodybuilder on YouTube, so there's a lot of different things that go into it. So keto diet is meant to put somebody into actual ketosis. It's not a low carb diet. It's not the same.
That's a great clarification.
And some people might do better on a low carb diet versus actually being in ketosis, and vice versa. So again, kind of the theme of the day is making sure that you are talking with somebody and getting tested for the right things to know which one of those is actually most beneficial for you.
Yeah. And is, getting an understanding of your health, right? So we see a lot of patients with neurological conditions, autoimmune conditions. So that might be different than maybe, something that you have going on, if it's not even related to that, right? So finding what's working for you. I feel like I hear a lot about vegetarian diets. What about, FODMAP and like low histamine?
Yes.
There's so many out there. it's important to get an idea of like reasonings as to why some of these are helpful, and understanding what might be the most helpful for you. But in reality, even, right, we see people with SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and then we get into the idea of, well, things that could be healthy for most people, like lots of veggies. There are some certain vegetables that people with SIBO and SIFO, small intestinal fungal overgrowth, can't have. So you might be thinking you're moving in the right direction,
Like, I'm eating my vegetables.
but then the vegetables are making you feel crummy. So the vegetables are terrible. It must be the vegetables.
Should stick with the brownies. Stick with the gluten.
Yeah, it's all about, I think the take home here is it's all about the mechanism, and working with a provider, a nutritionist, a dietitian, functional medicine provider, somebody that is educated and is going to walk you through this and make sure that you're educated on what you're doing and
Right.
doing it right.
And then also, like, no matter what nutritional plan you're trying to do or somebody puts you on or recommends for you, I think one of the things that I try to do with all of my patients is kind of meet them where they're at, right? Like, some people, you got to push them a little bit, right? But it's, we never want to like take a bunch of things away from people, right? And then just be like, this is going to be your life forever. You can't eat anything, stick to cucumbers and grilled chicken, no marinade. That's what you get. We want to clean up the system. We want to improve those underlying mechanisms that are maybe causing a lot of discomfort for somebody. And then be able to put them on something specific for them. And maybe they eliminate a few things, overall for the long term, versus like sometimes we'll do elimination diets with people and we'll like take a bunch of stuff out. And it's never my goal to say, we're going to take all this stuff out of your diet and you got to eat like this for the rest of your life. It's just not, it's not feasible. Realistic. People are going to fall off the wagon. And, I have that conversation too, because people come in. I had a patient the other day. She, I think, had a sensitivity to gluten. And then we were cleaning up some other things. She had chronic daily headaches. She had fatigue. She's got joint pain. She's diagnosed with fibromyalgia. She's got all these, inflammatory responses going on. And we cleaned up her diet. She was doing really, really well. And then she had to unexpectedly go out of town. And she came back in. She goes, I almost didn't come in for my appointment because I haven't been doing my diet. I said, okay, well, how are you feeling? She goes, I've had a headache every day. And I was like, okay, so now what? And she goes, I don't want to do that again. And so then the conversation we have is, you're going to fall off the bandwagon. And I think the more you realize how much things are impacting how you feel, the better you get at, not veering so far off the path before you get back on.
Yeah. I always talk about this with my patients too. I'm like, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And a lot of times I get real with patients. I'm like, just person to person, I deal with my own autoimmunity, and I know this is a marathon, not a sprint, and things will go up and down. But the biggest part is the education, right? The empowerment of understanding why you're doing certain things and why you're making certain decisions. So when you do fall off the bandwagon, which you will, and as you start to feel better, hopefully those swings and sways in your symptoms that wax and wane are going to be fewer and far between. And, that spaghetti you eat that one night is not going to be the end of the world if you get to a place where you're much more healthy overall.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what, like, the human body is, being able to adapt to its environment. So not only the external environment, but your internal environment. And as you become healthier as a whole, like you said, you might be able to tolerate, I think I was talking to this patient, I'm like, at some point you might be able to eat that piece of cake and feel totally fine. But also the psychology of doing that is going to be like, I ate that piece of cake, I felt okay. That doesn't mean I can eat a piece of cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the next 3 days. I know that if I do that, things are going to start to unravel and it's not going to be what I want it to. I always tell people, so most of Dr. Lauren and I are sisters. Our dad loves Bonefish Grill. And growing up, we used to go to
closed now, by the way.
That's very sad.
I
For Tony.
know.
um, Growing up, we used to go there all the time. And if you've ever been there, they must put extra gluten in their bread because it is good and it comes out warm, and they give you this dipping sauce. And I remember thinking, there's no way that I could sit at this table with the smell of this bread and this dipping sauce and be in that environment and not
Not
eat
eat
the
it.
bread. I remember thinking that. And it's just your mindset starts to change, and you start to learn, like, what you can tolerate and what you can't. There's so much psychology around food, especially in the
Yes.
United States. And there's so much negative, things that we deal with around food, right? And so, you got to be careful in kind of dealing with that aspect of it, and also understanding like what's going to make you the most physically and mentally healthy without pushing yourself too far over the edge. Because I always am very conscious of, and we start to learn these patients that start to go down a different rabbit hole, that it's like,
Yeah, if you cut,
you
yeah,
gotta
you
eat,
can't
you have to eat, and you can't be so kind of OCD about what that is, and you've got to kind of learn to navigate that. So it can go both ways, like cake
Yeah.
or nothing,
Yeah.
and neither one are good.
Yeah. And speaking up about those things are important too. If you find yourself swinging on one end or the other of that,
Yeah.
you need to speak to somebody, because there's a lot of times where there might be a cross of a line here with eating disorders and things like that. And there are people that can help. I actually spoke to a nutritionist who's an eating disorder specialist this morning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very prevalent. And sometimes people don't realize what they're doing fits in an eating disorder category either. Because they're like, oh, I'm not eating, right? I'm not anorexic, and I'm not bringing my food back up. I'm not bulimic, right? Those are two extremes. But there's gray area. And yeah, I think that's a really, really good point that you brought up, Dana. And just speaking to your providers, being honest with the people that are helping you, and just don't feel like you have to do it alone, because you don't. It's effort on both ends, from trying to eat to the psychological components, and not being so hard on yourself. That was definitely a lesson I learned, because I think at some point in college was kind of tipping those scales. It was so hard to know what was going to be better for me, but what I grew up eating was something totally different. So my connection to food and those things, but like Dr. Dana said, I mean, that starts to unravel and you start to learn, and your brain changes, and your psychology around it changes. And that's a big thing I try to educate my patients. I'm like, when we give you, some type of food restriction, it's not that we need you to do it forever, but it's more of right now going to be an educational place for you to start learning how to make better choices. And when you can learn to make better choices about what you're eating, then it's just going to be more natural to be eating healthier on a regular basis with way less effort.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are always interested in what we do. So I thought maybe we could share, because, I mean, everybody has their own things that they do and they deal with and they're conscious about, and, all of that. So I thought maybe you and I could share, like, just some of our stuff, because we want you guys to understand that we're not just telling you to do something. When I first was in practice, I tried, like, any nutritional program that I recommended for my patients, I always did first, because I wanted to know what they were experiencing, what it felt like, how I felt, what my brain was doing and thinking. So, full disclosure, personally, I deal with SIBO, and it's something that is really difficult to manage. And there's a lot of people that do deal with it. And, everyone always asks, like, oh, do you do the hyperbaric? Do you do red light? Do you eat gluten? Do you do that? Right. I have gone through so many tests of my own, and I don't have any gluten sensitivity or dairy sensitivity or things like that. But I really pay attention to when I'm consuming my food, because I've gotten myself to a point where I know what I can have. I really can't have any alcohol. It is a sad day when you want to have a glass of wine, but it is what I need to do for myself. And, if I do have that glass of wine, I know that my body's going to pay for it. And so I'm really conscious of that. So that's something where, that's my piece of cake, right? It's something where I know that I can maybe have one, but if I do that for a few days, or if I have more than that, my body's not going to do well. And then I also do actually intermittent fast. So most days of the week, I fast from the end of dinner the night before to 1 p.m. the following day. And for me, that has been something that has helped tremendously. And I'm not saying that every SIBO patient should do that. But over the years, that is what I've found that I can do that's functional for me. And that really makes me feel pretty good compared to some other things that I've tried.
Yeah. Totally different for me. Because I deal with autoimmunity, so definitely the cheese and gluten are not my best friend. So I know if I have too much, things are gonna get flared up. And now I kind of treat it like a blessing in disguise, right? If things start flaring up, then I go, whoa, I need to evaluate what I've been doing, the last couple weeks and scale back. So I'm not 100% gluten or dairy free, but for the most part, I would say I look up a lot of Whole30 recipes, to be honest.
Love Whole30.
Yeah, because it's primarily anti-inflammatory. You can find a variety of things. I know what I love to eat, but I want a healthy version. It's so easy to go to Google. A Whole30
Or their
approved.
Instagram is really good. Whole30
Yeah,
recipes.
Whole30 recipes has so many. So sometimes I love just like looking through that, picking something, going to the store. To be compliant, one of the things that I do is I always make extra food for dinner so that I can bring it for lunch. I do some intermittent fasting. When I first started doing that, though, it made me very aware of my hypoglycemia that needed to get under control. So I did back down. I was using bone broth. I was having, I do small snacks when I'm not intermittent fasting. And that makes a big difference, especially on like a long day at work. I can just feel the brain fog and fatigue. And now I know that it's related to my blood sugar, but I'm not grabbing candy or a Gatorade. That's a big thing is you want good proteins, and fats are going to be really helpful for actually regulating your blood sugar. And that makes a really big difference. So I would say those are the two things.
That's interesting because I think I used to be very hypoglycemic. And as my body has gotten better and I can adapt better, I'm kind of the opposite, I think, of you now, where if I didn't sleep well the night before or I'm not feeling that great, I will full on fast. So I'll do a 24-hour fast from dinner the night before to dinner that day. And sometimes it's like I almost have too much energy when I do that. And it's good because I can get through my day and I feel very clear and I'm, functioning at a high level.
Yeah.
But sometimes even that night, I'm like, ooh, time to go to bed. And I'm like, but it's almost the opposite.
Eat those carbs. Get those carbs.
Yeah. And then,
yeah, but that's a great example, right? That doesn't mean that intermittent fasting is bad for everybody.
Right. And my body wasn't always like that. That wasn't.
Yeah, it takes time. And that's what I'm noticing too. So now I can go longer parts of the day, but it wasn't going one extreme or the other, right? It wasn't like, oh, this didn't work, so I'm never doing it again. I just evaluated the situation and I eased myself into it. And now, a lot of times during the day, I feel a lot better. If I don't eat as much. Most of us are eating too much in the first place. So when I actually do less, I do feel better. And the other one that I've really been trying to do is be cautious how much I'm eating for dinner. Because a really big meal, 2 close to the end of the day. I definitely don't start out well. So if I try to keep even my dinner, I eat more of like a substantial lunch. And then I'll try to keep my dinner a little bit lighter, or sometimes not eat and actually start my fast at, the day before, not at night.
At dinner, yeah. I've been trying to not eat past 7, which I think today we're gonna be.
Sometimes it's cutting it close. With
we might get there. But that's also been helpful for me too. I think I sleep better. And yeah, so that's
Lots
what we
of
do.
options.
I think this was a great topic, and I'm sure that we're probably gonna have a ton of questions and people are gonna ask us, what should they do and all that stuff. So if you guys want, we could always break these up into like, do you guys want to know more about keto, or more about fasting, or more about gluten, or all of those things? So we would be happy to break this down even more into kind of the nitty gritty of these individual parts, because I'm actually surprised that this is going to be a long episode, and I think it's going to be really interesting for people. I think we're going to probably be able to put some more information out there. So let us know specifically what you guys are interested in learning more about, or any experience maybe that you guys have had, and potentially we can shine some light on your good experience or your bad experience, and all of that stuff. So always appreciate you tuning in, listening. We've been getting such great feedback, and like Dr. Lauren said, you guys are driving these videos, and we just want to be able to put the information out there, because like we said in the beginning, we think everybody should have this information and then be able to navigate their healthcare from there. So that's why we're doing this. We're doing it for you guys out there in the interwebs, and our patients as well, obviously. So just stay tuned, keep us posted, like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Instagram, our Facebook, and share any of this information that you think is helpful for you, a friend, a family member, even grandma. And we'll keep making these videos.
All right. Have a good night. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.